so you can tell like Kinesis moving the crowd. I done jump out the bleach, the people they need, let's get off the ground. We be fighting the bleed and sweating the greed until
No More Sleep Game Script is all about helping fantasy football owners with the week-to-week lineups. And we do it based on reliable information like the numbers, like the game script, like coaching. Rather than looking at just a player, you don't know if that player might get injured. You don't know if they get hurt. You don't know who's on a waiver wire. Your team might look different. So the best thing to do is, since your team could change, your lineups can change, the guy who you put in and out could change, look at the game script and then make a decision based on that. Today, video is going to be focused on Redskins versus Eagles, and today's video is sponsored by FanLife, the sports app, www.fanlife, spelled lyfe.com. We're going to focus on the Redskins first, and then we'll pivot over to the Eagles and look at the guys who you have, see if the strengths and weaknesses we talk about line up, and then I'll give you an example on both sides of how you can make this work. All right, let's talk about the Redskins. So there are 5 things to talk about when it comes to the Redskins, and then we'll give you the conclusions. First thing is Jordan Reed is probably out. Okay, I'm pretty sure he's not going to play. So why is that a big deal? Because he had 18% snap share last year, so that's going to be divvied up amongst the offensive starters. Second thing to think about is the strengths of the week. The strengths of the Redskins receivers is 2 things: separation and speed. Their cushion rating was 4.2 on average. So 4.2 average cushion is highly acceptable. There are some that's better, but that's very good. I'm going to assume that's going to be top 15%. And then if you look at their average 40 time, it's a 4.4 40 time. So they're fast and they can separate. That's really good. Third thing you want to keep in mind is this Eagles defense does not allow people to rush the ball a lot. Now, whether they're efficient against that, we'll talk about that in a second, but they saw the lowest rushing attempts per game. And given the fact that the Redskins line, the offensive line, is unproven, and they're normally playing from behind from a game script perspective, so which means less opportunities for the running back. For this game, we say avoid running back completely on the Redskins. So if you got a running back on the Redskins, completely avoid them in this game. The fourth thing on the Redskins' point of view is the Eagles were worst when it, with defending receptions. So they allowed the highest receiving receptions per game. To put a number to that, they allowed on average 26.1 receptions per game. They were third worst in receiving yards per game, and they were fourth. They allowed the fourth most receptions of 20-plus yards. Okay, so you can expect about 3 receptions of 20-plus yards in this game between the Redskins and the Eagles. And then lastly, from the Redskins' point of view, is that the Eagles' defense could not get off the field. They had one of the actually let me fix that. The Eagles' defense got off the field quickly. So let me rephrase. The Eagles' defense got off the field quickly, which meant if you look at time of possession, the majority of the time of possession on the Eagles side was on the offensive side of the ball. So defense was not on the field long. Now, when you compare all of those things, the conclusions are twofold. One, avoid running backs completely if you have a Redskins running back. And then conclusion 2 is if you're going to start a receiver, okay, if you have to start a receiver on the Redskins side, you want to get the receiver who has at least 60% snap share or more, runs a 4.5 or faster 40-yard time, and has a cushion average of 4.2 or more. An example of someone who has all 3 of those things, except for the snap share, though the snap share is probably going to go up because Jordan Reed is out, that person is Trey Quinn. Okay? And then he also gets a bonus because he has a 90% catch rate. And Case Keenum typically like to rely on the receiver who is consistently catching the ball. So that's an example. We're not saying start Trey Quinn. We're saying amongst the receivers on the Redskins squad, Trey Quinn is the closest to matching all of the strengths that are needed to pair well against the weaknesses of the Eagles. in week 1. Let's move on to the Eagles side of the ball. There are 4 things from their perspective. So perspective one is D-Jax. Deshaun Jackson broke his ring finger. I think he's going to play. I'll be shocked if he didn't play. However, the typical amount of share that he sees, snap share, is 50%. I am going to say in this game in week 1, it's probably going to be slightly less than 50%. Okay? Perspective number 2 from the Eagles' point of view is the Eagles receivers are strong in 3 areas. They're strong in receiving average. So on average amongst their starters is a 13.3, really high. They are strong in snap share. So on average, their receivers, their starters, are on the field 78.3% of the time. That's a lot. Okay, so their receivers are heavily involved. And then the third strength from a receiver side on the Eagles is their air yard average, which is 5.5 air yard average. That's high for an entire group. The third point of view, we'll bring all that together in a second. The third point of view is, so the Eagles had the 8th highest receiving yards per game and the 5th highest receptions per game. All right, so both top 10 when it came to receiving yards and receptions. That's amazing. And then lastly, the Eagles saw a 0.3, a positive 3.5 game script, which meant that they're typically ahead in the game. That's good for the receivers. I mean, that's good for the running back, because when you're ahead, you're trying to run the clock out. It's not great for the receivers, okay, because there's no garbage time for them. So the conclusions here. Conclusion number 1 for the Eagles is, if you have to start an Eagles receiver, you need to think about, so again, we know they're heavily involved. We know, look, the Redskins were 4th worst against third down, okay? But they were 7th best against sacks. They had the 7th highest amount of sacks. And they were 26th in rushes against first down and 5th in forced fumbles. So basically what that means is, you're going to need to get a receiver on an Eagles team. If you have to start a receiver on an Eagles team, you need to get the receiver who is heavily involved in deep passes. Not deep passes, dump balls. Okay? Why? Well, the Redskins are going to give the Eagles a lot of opportunities on third down. However, the Redskins is good at sacks. Okay? They can get sacks. They're the 7th best. Which means the Eagles are not going to automatically run the ball on third down. They're probably going to pass it. Now, the other thing is, the Redskins are horrible against the rush on first down. They were 26. All right? Which means on first down, it's probably going to be a run. The Redskins was 5th best in forced fumbles. So again, with this Eagles, running squad, if they fumble the ball, they're probably going to get taken out. Okay? Now, when you look at all of that from a game script perspective, what you can expect is that Carson Wentz, or whoever is starting at quarterback, is going to try to capitalize on second downs and third downs. Second and third downs. And second and third down, when you have people rushing, and we know that the Redskins like to blitz, that's why they're 7th best in sacks. On second and third down, when you're facing a blitz, it's good to go for a dump ball. Not deep, because you don't have time to look for that. Okay? You go with a dump ball. So I explained that so that you can understand why we're about to say this next portion, which is the conclusion is, if you're going to start a receiver from the Eagles, get the receiver who is heavily involved in dump balls. How do you know that? The person with the lowest air yards. Okay? Dump balls don't have good air yards. Air yards is the vertical between the ball while it's in the air until it's caught. Right? When it's a dump ball, that's going to be lower air yards than the deep ball. So heavily involved in the dump balls. Second, highest catch rate. You got to be able to catch the ball against a team that can force fumbles. Okay? That's going to scare people someone drops the ball, or someone's fumble. Once that first fumble happened, and it will happen on the Eagle side of the ball, it's going to be scary. Okay, so they're going to want to rely on a person who got a good catch rate. And then lastly, you don't want contested catches against a team that force fumbles. All right, so you don't want the guy who has the most contested catch targets. You want the one with the lowest contested catch targets. So when you combine all of that, lowest air yards because of the dump balls, highest catch rate because of the forced fumbles, and the lowest contested catches because it creates the least amount of opportunities of a fumble, Dallas Goedert is the person who has all three of those. Are we saying start Dallas Goedert? We are not saying that. At No More Sleep, we focus on stats, game script, data, information, not players. But I'm giving you an example of how you mesh all that together. All right? So do the same exercise for the other guys that I didn't mention on the Redskins staff and on the Eagles staff. Notice I didn't talk about the Eagles running back, okay? Running backs. You got Jordan Howard, you got Miles Sanders, you got Darren Sproles, and the list goes on. Again, we're going to say it's not enough upside for us to say, you know what, go ahead and start one of these guys. Obviously, one of them can get off. That'd be nice. But just given from a game script perspective, it will make sense for Doug Peterson and the boys to exploit the receiving opportunities here in this game, not necessarily the rushing. Yes, Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard could get opportunities in the passing game. That's great. If you had to choose between, Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders, Darren Sproles, and the 1,000 other running backs on that roster, if you had to choose between them, again, go with the one who can catch the ball and is involved in the deep ball, so who has the lowest air yards and don't have contested catches. Running backs don't have contested catches, so you don't have to worry about that stat. No More Sleep game script.
Get it, go get it, I got it. Get it, go get it, I got it. Get it, go get it, I got it.